Nice crowd. Well, hello. Welcome,
Yes.
everybody. We're so thrilled that you're here. I'm Gigi Fusco-Mies, and I'm the Director of Community and Donor Relations for 3D Theatricals. On behalf of my entire 3D team, we want to welcome you to 3D+U, and thank you. This is the end of our third week. So thank you for joining us. If this is your first time, welcome. You are in for quite the treat. Today, we've got a great session all about playwriting and writing, and you couldn't find a better instructor today than our guest speaker, Mr. Luke Yankee. Luke is a published author, playwright. He's actually making royalties from some of his plays out there.
He is.
Which is the dream, right? He's also an actor, director, professor. He has done many events, producing and directing special events all across the country. And he has done his one-man show, Diva Dish, his life growing up as the son of Oscar winner Eileen Heckert. And he did a little snippet of it for us last week, and it was just wonderful. So we hope he'll come back and do that for us again. So without further ado, Luke, the class is yours.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to see you all here. One thing is you might want to go, if you don't have one, you might want to go and get a pen and paper because you will be needing one. Because this is going to be a very interactive workshop, and I encourage you to participate and ask questions and all that good stuff. So, gosh, I sort of fell into playwriting. I started out as an actor, as Gigi said, and studied acting at Juilliard, and then from there I got into directing, and I assistant directed 6 Broadway shows and ran 2 regional theaters, and then reached, as can often happen, reached a bit of a dry spell for no reason other than it was just, I was sort of in between gigs and work just kind of dried up for a moment. So I thought I started writing my own plays so that I would have something to direct or to act in. And so it really was sort of out of necessity. And at this point, I've had 5 plays published. One is called The Last Lifeboat, which is about the aftermath of the sinking of the Titanic. And I'm very proud that that one has had 50 productions around the country, more than 50. And as a matter of fact, for any of you who care to check out my this, there is a wonderful writer who has written a lot of romance novels and a lot of sci-fi novels, and she is also a bit of a Titanic buff, and so she does a big thing every year in April, because April is the anniversary of the sinking of the Titanic. So she does a big piece every year about all the Titanic books and things out there. So yesterday when I saw this piece, I wrote her and I said, wonderful article, thank you so much, but by the way, I've also written a play about the Titanic, and just wanted you to be aware of it, etc. Well, God bless her, she checked out my website for the play, which is called The Last Lifeboat, and so she went to thelastlifeboat.com, and she went back and rewrote her article and did a whole paragraph on me, which I thought was, and on the play, which I thought was so incredibly kind of her. So I'm just curious, if you could just give me, those of you who are on screen, if you could just give me a show of hands, how many of you have any experience at all with playwriting? You've written a play before, or I see Jennifer has, Laura, great. I have to put on Travis, I have to put on my glasses to see the names here. Okay, and how many of you have never written anything besides a check or an email? Christy, okay, Luke, Simon, all right, wonderful, wonderful. Okay, some of the rest of you, I see my friend Benjamin is on here. I know he's a wonderful writer, and great. Okay, wonderful. Some of the rest of you will just kind of figure it out here. Oh, Gigi, thank you for putting up there thelastlifeboat.com. Great. So, what I want to do is we're going to do a couple of different exercises here and just try some different things. And I ask you to just kind of go with me here. And as I said in the description, all you needed for this workshop was a pen and a paper and an active imagination. So I'd like you to write at the top of, and listen to all of the instructions before you do anything, okay? But I'd like you to write at the top of a piece of paper, the time when. And you can go ahead and do that if you want. Just do that. Just write the time when at the top of a piece of paper. Great. So now, in just a moment, I want you all to just, we are all storytellers. Everybody is naturally a storyteller, whether you know it or not, whether it's something you've ever chosen to put down on paper or not. We all have stories from our lives. So I'd like you to just take a couple of minutes now and just brainstorm and try as little as possible to not have the pen leave the paper. Just, don't think about it. Just, and what would you write about for the time when? The time when I got my first bicycle, the time when grandma died, the time when, my favorite one that I ever came up with was the time when the dog ate the sweet and sour sauce and looked like Vincent van Gogh. So, so just whatever you can think of, just kind of brainstorm, just take a few minutes and write down just your response to the time when. Some of the stories from your life, okay? I'd prefer these to be actual things that actually happened to you or to someone you know. Great, the time when mom crashed the car into this grocery store window. Hopefully that hasn't happened, but whatever, you get the idea. Just whatever you can think of in terms of the time when. And again, don't think about it too much. Just kind of keep writing as best you can.
Do you want us to hold up what we wrote down, or are you going to call on us one-on-one like a real
Well, I
professor?
I just want to give people another moment or two to write.
Okay.
And now, what I want you to do is kind of look over your list, and obviously your list could go on if we had more time, but in the interest of time, we're going to kind of keep things moving here. So everybody's got a couple of them, I would imagine. So I'd like everybody to go into the chat and write their best one, okay? And just put it on the time when blah, 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 blah. So just write down whatever, whatever you want to for whatever you want to share with us for the time when whatever happened. And just write it down in the chat. Oh, okay, the first one I'm seeing here is the time when the family car rolled down the driveway and took out the mailbox. That's a good one. Clifford says, the time when I started teaching and a student insulted me through my mother. Wow. I bet that's a story. And Jennifer wrote, the time when the cars, yes, more than one, that belonged to my name had 4 crashes within 4 days. Oh my goodness. TJ says, I guess it's TJ because it's 3D Theatricals, no, that's Gigi. So Gigi says, the time my dad voted for me. Travis says, the time when my family went on vacation and my mom threw out her back, so we have to push around Washington, D.C. in a wheelchair. Okay, that's great. Any of the rest of you, if you want to share, please just type them into the comments, and these are all really fun. These are very fun. You've got some great, great stories here and some great things to write about. So Christy says, the time my family drove away from the house and forgot me and finally came back. So Laura says, the time my dad gave me a puppy without consulting his ex-wife, and my mom couldn't deal with the rowdy puppy because I was 7 years old and had no skills caring for a dog. That's great. Okay, wonderful. A lot of fun stuff here. So as I said before, we're all natural storytellers. We all have stories from aspects of our lives. And we are all artists in one sort or another. Whether or not you consider yourself an artist, because of the fact that you're able to tell these stories, that makes you an artist. I've got another one here. Danny said, the time I passed out on the altar while an altar boy. Oh, wow. Wow, that's a good one. So today, given the nature of the class, we're going to primarily focus on how to write a monologue. And so I'd like you all to just, okay, Benjamin said the time when I saw a Marilyn Monroe movie for the first time. Benjamin is a friend of mine and we're both big Marilyn Monroe fans. Great. My friend Anthony here as well. Happy to see you, Anthony. So, so what are the keys to writing a monologue? All right. Basically, when you write a monologue, you're speaking in the first person. And imagine that you are telling this story as if it's happening in the past tense. Imagine that you're telling it to your best friend, your spouse, your shrink, somebody that you could feel comfortable being intimate with, so that you can tell the intimate details of this story. Now, obviously, when I say intimate, I don't necessarily mean sexual, unless it's that kind of a story, but just really revealing yourself, okay? Really telling this story in a way that is going to bring people in. And one of the things that I have learned as a writer is that, and this is a really important thing, if you get no other takeaway from this class, I would love it to be this. The more specific and the more detail-oriented and the more personal you make a story, the more universal it becomes. I wrote a book called Just Outside the Spotlight. It was a memoir about, Gigi mentioned that my mother was the actress Eileen Heckert. And this was a book about growing up as, you know, the son of an Academy Award-winning actress and a Tony-winning actress. And I would sit, I'm digressing a little bit here, but I'll circle back around. So I would sit at the computer sometimes and my husband would come in early in the morning and I would be sitting there sobbing, going, nobody's gonna give a shit about this book, and it's not gonna sell any copies, and who wants to hear my stories anyway? But the more personal I made it, and the more specific I made it to me and to my experience, the more universal it became. Because I cannot tell you the number of people, when the book came out, the number of people who would say, gosh, Luke, your experience with your mother was just like my experience with my uncle. Or, oh, that, you know, this character so reminded me of my father-in-law, or whatever, you know? So again, the more specific you make it, the more universal it becomes. So you all have some fabulous ideas here. I'd like you to take one of these and I want you to write the way you speak. And I will ask some of you to share these if you feel so inclined, if you feel comfortable doing so, but that's entirely your choice. And as if you're telling this story to your best friend, to your parents, your brother, sister, whomever, and we'll just have time to do a little bit, just given the nature of time, but start telling this story. Just start writing down this story and sharing this story as if you were writing a monologue, as if you were telling this to your best friend in the first person. So there I was, and when the car started rolling down the driveway and hit the mailbox, et cetera, you know, whatever you choose to focus on for your story, just start writing it down in the first person, as if you're telling it to a good friend or somebody you care about. Make it as conversational and as relaxed and easy as you care to. So just give it another minute or two, even if you're just doing the introduction and even if you're just doing the first little bit. Okay, so just finish up the thought you're on. I realize you probably haven't gotten very far into your story or your monologue, but that's okay. We're just kind of getting going here, just getting started. So the way you start is very important. And so rather than talking about that, if any of you feel comfortable sharing the opening of your stories, just kind of put up your hand. And great, Laura, thank you so much for volunteering.
Okay, so I do it as if I'm talking to my sister. I don't know if that matters, but
Great.
okay, so I went out to leave mom's house. I got in the car and I put it in reverse and I started out of the driveway and I felt something big, like some, I don't know, maybe a bag of groceries was under my back tire. So I got out. Now the baby's still in the car seat, mind you, and I go to look at the tires. Okay, you know how Guilford loved to sleep behind the tire of the car? That's as far as I got.
Awesome. Awesome. So what did we think about that? Anybody want to share their thoughts about Laura's story? Travis, what I see you nodding your head. What did you think of it?
It was very conversational, like talking to an old friend, talking to someone you haven't seen in a while, catching up about this unique incident that happened. I love where you left off. And if you had more time, obviously you'd continue, but it was like a cliffhanger. Like, I want to hear more.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Jennifer, I saw you nodding as well. Was anything you wanted to say about Laura's story?
Sure. I was totally brought into it right away because my story is also about a car, but I heard the baby in the back seat. I'm a mom, and I understood that horrific feeling of knowing something is under your tire. So I was
Absolutely.
right away.
Yeah. That's a pretty scary feeling, isn't it? We've all experienced that. Anything else that anybody wanted to share about Laura's story? Yes, Anthony, please.
I think what made it so natural too, or in conversational, was the interrupted train of thought. You kind of questioned yourself halfway through, and that's how people naturally speak. You don't just kind of talk in this continuous stream of consciousness that where everything sort of just fits in place. There are sort of moments where you doubt yourself and question what you had to say to begin with. So I love that about it.
Very good point, Anthony. Yes, very well said. Yeah, it was. Oh, Gigi, did you want to say something? I'm sorry.
It was very engaging. You had me at hello. I mean, really.
Aww.
No,
It was very engaging. I was just like, oh, I want to hear more. Great story.
Yeah, definitely. It was extremely conversational. It was very easy. Now, even if Laura hadn't told us that she was talking to her sister, we certainly would have gotten that she was, that just the familiarity and the tone of it, we certainly would have gotten that she was talking to someone that she was on, an intimate relationship with, because there was no sense of formality about it. As everyone said, you all said it drew us in right away. And another thing is that in terms of exposition, everybody knows what exposition is. When you see a play or something, it's that information that you need to know, kind of what happened before the play starts, about who the characters are, etc. The interesting thing about exposition is you don't have to dole it out all at once. And then we're going to go on to somebody else. I just want to make one other point here, is that what was the name right at the very end, Laura?
Guilford, that's the name of the cat.
Okay, Guilford. Now, we didn't know who Guilford was.
Right.
But I certainly, I don't know about you, but I certainly assumed that Guilford was an animal. I kind of assumed that Guilford was a dog. But, so the point is, it's like you don't have to know who Guilford is right away to get, uh-oh, there's something named Guilford under the tire of one of the cars, and this is not going to be good. So, and again, the specificity. How many of you, just give me a show of hands, how many of you, when she said Guilford, whether you thought it was a dog or a cat or whatever, got an image in your head of what you thought Guilford looked like? I certainly did, because that's such a distinctive name. That's such a distinctive name, Yeah, wonderful, really wonderful work.
Thank you.
Would anyone else like to share theirs? Great, Clifford, please.
Oh, okay, you unmuted me.
Yeah.
All right. How much do you want me to share? How far?
How much have you got?
Okay, a couple paragraphs.
You know what? Just give us maybe like the first paragraph. How's that?
Okay. It was my first year as a high school teacher. I was in a tough school in downtown Los Angeles, deep in the heart of gang territory.
You can give us a little more.
I discovered that if I gave the students worksheets to do, they stayed quiet. And one day, a kid, for no reason I could tell, simply spontaneously announced, "Hey, Mr. G, I did your mother."
That's
Without
a great
missing,
place to stop.
oh, you got to hear the next line.
Okay, go for it.
Without missing a beat, I took my thumb and index finger and made the gesture for small and said, "Yeah, but she said you weren't very good."
Okay. Okay. Any comments on Clifford's story? Yeah, Christy, did I see your hand up? No? Okay, great. Anybody like to comment on
This is fantastic. Love it.
Thank you.
what was fantastic about it? Laura, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, I was trying to unmute. I think Gigi and I were both unmuting at the same time.
No problem.
Well, at first I thought it was going to be like fairly serious, about these students, and it was like, oh God, it's in a bad part of town and somebody's going to get hurt or shot. And then the punchline just came at me out of nowhere and it cracked me up. That was brilliant. It was very serious to begin with, and I was a little concerned about your safety and these kids and what was going to happen. And then it was just this zinger. So really fun.
Great. Yes, great. Anyone else like to share any thoughts about it?
I'd like to know
Benjamin, what did you think of it?
I want to
go
know
ahead,
what the
Gigi.
kid did in detention after you sent him to detention.
Really?
I
Benjamin,
didn't send him to detention.
Oh,
I
good
shot
for
him
you.
down hard enough, and the
That
whole
was
class
enough,
was
okay.
laughing at him.
Benjamin, did you have any thoughts about it?
Yes, I thought nearly the same. So it was a kind of a break. I first thought there would be something very dangerous or something, and then it turned into something something totally complete.
Wonderful, wonderful. Benjamin is coming to us, by the way, all the way from Germany, which is very exciting.
Well, wonderful. Thank you for joining us.
Yes, delighted to have him here. Now, Clifford, tell me your first line again, if you would, please. I want to use this to make a point.
There we go. Okay. It was my first year as a high school teacher.
Okay, now that immediately, it was my first year as a high school teacher. Now, pro or con, that immediately gives us all an image, okay? And obviously that image would be tempered by what your experience was like in high school, or what your experience was like as a teacher in high school. And so when he said that, there was, as some of you said, there was a wonderful twist in it, because when he talked about being in this rough inner city school in downtown Los Angeles, several of you said, "Oh, I got concerned for Clifford's safety." I thought, "Oh, this is not going to be good." So my point is, and Laura did this beautifully as well, is that how you start, your opening line, is so important and makes such a difference. And this is true whether you're writing a novel, whether you're writing a monologue, whether you're writing a scene, how you start, because you want to draw the audience in. And in this era of, where we're so used to just flipping the channels, every 20 seconds, it's really got to be a strong opening to draw people in. Before I wrote my memoir, I took a memoir writing class up in Los Angeles with this wonderful teacher named Jack Grapes. I mean, he's this wonderful man. He's with a big beard. He's kind of like a modern day Tevye, from Fiddler on the Roof, and just a terrific guy. And so we all had to do journal entries, and then at some point we had to craft one of these journal entries into a short story and share it with the class. And so towards the end of the class, there was, this has become so much of a stereotype, but there was the typical girl in the back of the class, big thick glasses, stringy hair, usually wearing like a baggy sweater, never opened her mouth, hardly ever said anything. And I think her name was Angie. So finally, it's Angie's week to get up and share her story. So we're all like, okay, you know, we don't know who this girl is. She's not shared anything this whole time. We have no sense of what this is going to be. So Angie stands up with her big thick glasses and she starts reading her story. And the first line was, "It was my first penis, and it was a big one." I mean, talk about an opening line. I'm, you know, everybody, didn't matter, men, women. I mean, everybody's leaning forward like, wow, now that's an opening line to grab your attention.
Talk about, you had me at hello. Wow.
Exactly. Exactly. So, you know, regardless of what your opening line is, or whether it's as strong as that one, you know, how you start is of vital importance. And obviously, once you get started, just keeping the audience going, keeping them with you, is really, really important. So, does anyone else have a story, the opening paragraph or something of their monologue that they'd like to share?
Well, I'll play if I'm allowed.
Of course you're allowed. Oh,
Now
Anthony,
you're
did I see your hand up? Wait a minute.
No, I want somebody else. Who else?
I can do it if you want.
Okay,
Yeah, great,
you
Anthony.
go.
Kind of
Okay.
dark, kind of hard to see you. You're pretty dark, but
Yeah,
that's
it's pretty,
okay.
pretty obscured.
That's okay.
I woke up late that day. Well, I guess I always wake up late, but today was later than usual. After a while, when enough days have passed of you hitting snooze until the entire house is dressed and ready, you start not to care whether or not you're holding anyone up. And that's as far as I got.
Awesome. Awesome. So thoughts about Anthony's story? Anyone? Yes, Clifford.
I want to know if he's a student, if he has a job, what it is he's holding things up from.
Yeah, which obviously would be, you know, where it's going. Yeah. Any other comments about it? What was the tone of it like? I noticed a very unique, very specific tone. Anybody else have any thoughts about the tone of the storytelling?
You know, well,
Laura?
initially I thought it was going to go to a dark place.
Right.
Does
Laura,
that make sense?
did you want to add anything to that?
Me?
Laura.
Oh, Laura. Well, let me get her unmuted. Hold on.
Okay.
There she is.
I like the fact that you know something happened, something that day, even though every day he gets up late, but something about that day, and I'm on the edge of my seat wanting to know what it is, because it's like, I got up late that day. Well, I always get up late, but it's like, oh crap, but this day was different for whatever reason, and we're gonna find out eventually, and I'm ready. So yeah, I really like that.
Yes, yes. I have the privilege of knowing what an incredibly talented man Anthony is on many different levels, and quite brilliant. And one of the things that I don't know if this was as much as when I was mentioning about the tone, I don't know if this is as much in the writing or if it was in Anthony's delivery, but I very much got the feeling of a film noir. You know, that kind of hard-boiled detective talking about, I got up late that day. And it wasn't the first time I could almost hear the sultry saxophone music, you know, like out of City of Angels or something like that. I mean, it was very effective in that regard. But as Laura said, and as she said as well, I mean, you knew something was going to happen. You knew that there was there was something, that there was a sense of dramatic tension. And the other interesting thing, and thank you all for giving me such good teaching points through your work. One of the things that gave it such a sense of that dramatic tension in terms of the tone and the style was short sentences, okay? And a lot of times, very short sentences. It was dark. I walked down the hall. I turned on the light. And not just because I'm pausing, and of course that adds to it, the fact that I'm pausing, but you know, sometimes when you're trying to create a sense of tension in your writing, just using really short sentences can help with that, okay? Whereas there's one thing to be said for a short sentence and making that, and there's another thing that happens when you have a very long, very flowery, very complex sentence with a lot of description and that sort of thing. Now that serves a totally different purpose. But but doing a short, doing really short sentences can sort of add to the sense of dramatic tension, which is something that Anthony did really well there. Anybody else want to share their piece, or should we go on to say, yeah, great, terrific, Travis. Thank you so much.
Yeah, all right.
Yeah.
The morning of our first big family vacation in many years, my mother, who has a crippling fear of flying, by the way, threw out her back before we got in the car to go to the airport. We were flying to the East Coast for a week to visit Virginia, DC, New York, and we were all looking forward to it. But the morning we got up and packed the car, my mom threw out her back. It was excruciating for her, apparently, and a lot of conversation leading up to getting on the plane was about if she would stay or go.
Great, terrific, terrific. Any comments for Travis about what worked, what was successful about it, what was significant? Anything? Jennifer, any thoughts?
I felt very familiar. Like I've been, that family dynamic.
Yeah.
I felt right at home, very familiar, knowing what that's like immediately.
Yeah. Great.
Danny, do you have something to say?
Yeah, I was going to say, even with the little we got, there's obviously an indication that mom may not be joining him on the trip. And I know if my mother wasn't joining us and left dad with the 8 of us, it might have been a whole different trip. So that certainly has something ahead.
That's a good point. That's a good point, Danny, because a lot of times moms can sort of, especially in those family trips, the mom is the one who kind of makes things happen and all of that. So that's, that's a really good point. Any other thoughts on this? Yeah, Laura, please.
I really felt like it was the beginning of a story. Like, okay, we're settling in for this because there's a lot to be said. And like, okay, here it comes, guys. And it was kind of like that setup, almost like the beginning of a chapter of a book. Okay, here's what's going on in this chapter. And like a perfect setup for like Danny just said too, like all the stuff that's coming ahead. Oh my gosh, does this mean that mom's not coming? Is dad on his own? Are the kids going to go wild? What's going to happen? Does somebody have to stay home and take care of mom? Like, so there was it was like the perfect setup for the bigger story ahead.
Yeah, definitely. Now, Travis, there's one thing I would suggest if you were to, rework this, or if this were to be a first draft and you were to come back with another draft. You mentioned twice about her back. Yeah. And I almost felt like the first time that maybe you didn't need to give that away, because if I remember correctly, you said something about the fact that she had a bad back. She was prone to a bad back. You didn't use the word prone, I know, but you said that she had a bad back, and then later on you said her back went out. Is that correct?
Yeah, and actually, as I reread it, I was editing in my head that I should not have written it that second time, or not the first time and kept it just for the second time.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I think you probably, my suggestion would be that you don't need it the first time. So that then, because you're sort of giving away the secret when you say her back went out, mm-hmm. I mean, we all understand that. I mean, there's nothing worse than back pain and nothing more excruciating. So, is there anyone else who'd like to share their model? Otherwise, we can jump onto a different kind of exercise. Benjamin, please. Thank you. Benjamin, I think you're muted.
I'm trying to unmute him.
There we go.
Okay.
There.
Yes, you're unmuted now, Benjamin. Thank you.
Okay. I just thought it felt like the mother, it was a kind of introduction to her, like she's playing a leading part. So when you go further on, maybe there's something more about her. That's what I thought.
Yes, definitely. Benjamin, would you like to share your monologue about your first Marilyn Monroe movie?
Well, I just have 2 sentences, really.
That's okay. Maybe they're powerful 2 sentences.
Okay. I wrote down, I remember I was a little boy and we were at our grandparents' home. We just had dinner and sat down for watching TV. That's
okay.
It.
Great. Terrific. So any thoughts for Benjamin?
Says it all.
What's that?
It says it all.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's a start. I mean, we definitely get an image of being at the grandparents' house, sitting and watching TV, and yeah, we all have that image in our minds of what that's like, of doing that. So a lot of times, so now I want to go back and try something else. I'm just looking at our time here. Okay, great.
We're good.
And again, we're just going to have time for a little bit, so this will just be a soupçon. This will just be a taste of this. But what I'd like you to do is go back to your story, or if you want to choose one of your other The Time When stories, but maybe for the purposes, it would be best if you took this one, and rather than a monologue, let's make it a two-person scene, okay? So, and if you can do it with two people, maybe three, but let's just try and keep it simple and just do a few lines of just maybe two people kind of back and forth talking about this situation. And again, talking very conversationally. You know how some people have certain rhythms in their speech, certain expressions they use, certain cadences, maybe a dialect or something like that. So just take this same scenario and try doing it as dialogue and just see where that takes you. Now that you know it as a monologue, just try doing it now as dialogue.
That's so funny because I kind of did that in my first go round. It's like I wrote it in the voice of my mother's voice, my father's voice.
Cool. Okay. Great. Great.
These are great exercises, by the way, Mr. Yankee. Thank you.
I'm delighted that you're all here and that you're all playing. It's very fun. Very fun. So I'll just give you a minute or two to write here your first couple of lines. At the moment, I teach playwriting at Chapman University and also at Cal State Fullerton, a couple of different levels of it. And I just signed a contract to write a textbook called The Art of Writing for the Theater, an introduction to script analysis, theater criticism, and playwriting. So that's my quarantine project over the summer, which will keep me busy, that's for sure. Okay, so in the interest of time, we'll just kind of dive in here. Laura, since we started with you before, you want to give us your first couple of lines of dialogue?
Absolutely. So it was me and my sister. I just went with that.
Right.
So, Laura, so I was leaving Mom's house. Sarah, when was this? Laura, late-ish, like 9:30 or 10? I mean, Cameron was already out when I put him in the car. Sarah, okay. Laura, anyway, I was pulling out of the driveway.
Awesome. Awesome. Great, great. Any thought? And I know it's kind of tough having one person reading both parts, but you did it very well, Laura. But any thoughts about that? How it worked? I mean, there was certainly a nice flow to it, and we got a little bit of a sense of the relationship. Yes, please, Travis.
Seems like it's ramping up to go into a monologue.
Yeah.
It very much is what the monologue was, but with sort of interjections of a different character.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. Definitely. Gigi, did you since you already wrote yours that way, would you like to share yours?
Well, because there's nothing I love more than getting notes. I'm going to participate.
Me too.
Okay.
So I was home one afternoon and the phone rang and it was my father, my dad, Hank. He never called, but it was like any other conversation. Hey, honey, how you doing? How you doing today? And during this phone conversation, I could hear my mother yelling at him in the background, Henry, now you tell her right now. Startled, I asked my dad, Dad, what the hell's going on? And he go, well, you guys are real busy. I'd be like, yes. I mean, it's been years since my brother and sister and I had moved from the home, but we would all still get mail delivered to the family residence. And my mom is yelling, Harry, stop wasting time. Tell her right now. I'm like, Dad, I'm getting a little worried. What's going on? well, you guys know how busy you are, right? Well, all your absentee ballots came in for the election, and well, I voted for you.
Wow.
True story. I still don't know who I voted for that year. I think I have an inkling, but.
And any thoughts for Gigi?
Yeah.
Anthony, I see you laughing there.
I just love the accent. I know that's not in the writing necessarily, but it could be. I just love the I love how different each character their dialects are so distinct, and I think that's really one of the strengths of the pieces. You really don't need to guess like who's who. You don't even need character attributions. It's really how each character forms their sentences. You can totally tell it comes off the page.
Very much so. Yes, Clifford, please.
I feel like not only do I know your dad, but I understand some of the relationship between the two of you just from that snip.
That's great. Yeah, definitely. I mean, we all know that sort of dad. Yeah,
Right?
definitely.
Well,
Well, you know.
he meant well, and we had an amazing relationship. But that's like that in a nugget would describe how my father was.
Well, you know, the funny thing is when you did the time when, Gigi, and you said the time my dad voted for me, I thought you meant, you know, he voted for you for, I don't know, city council or to be chairman of the board or something like
Laura too.
that. That your dad
I tricked you. See?
You meant your dad literally voted for you, not that your dad voted for you.
Not only for me, but for my brother and sister.
Wow.
Because he felt, you know, we're so busy. Why come to the house to get those things? But I'm glad he told me. I would have hated to have gone to the polling place and they go, wait a minute, you already voted. That would have been an awkward conversation.
Awkward. Yeah,
Awkward.
definitely. Yes, Christy, please.
I feel like too, I mean, you definitely get that sense of relationship, and the accent just made it all, but I feel like what made half of us laugh and what made me laugh is that I feel like we all have someone in our family that did something at some point that you're like, oh, like you've got that parent or that grandparent or someone that did something and you're like, nope.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Christy. And it brings me back to the thing I said before about the more specific you make it. I mean, no, I have not ever had my father or anybody in my family, you know, cast a ballot in my name. But, you know, I've had family members do dumb things that's like, what, really? You really did that?
Yep.
So again, you know, the more specific she made it, the more universal it became. And, you know, another thing I just want to add here, just I'm keeping a strict eye on the time because I know the workshops are booked very tightly. And if we had been able to go on with this exercise, and, you know, let's say you reached a point where your two characters are having a conversation and the dialogue is flowing, and let's just say then all of a sudden there's a point where you don't know where to go. You just get kind of, personally, I don't believe in the concept of writer's block. I know a lot of people do, but let's just say you're stuck and you don't know where to go. So something you could do in that situation is ask your characters. Just kind of step outside for a minute and just say to your character, what would you like to say? And see if anything comes up. And if you're writing about, in this case, Gigi's father, or, you know, Laura was talking with her sister, you know, in a situation where you're dealing with characters that you know pretty well, or, you know, like family members or whatever, ask them what they want to say. You know, you have enough sense of their voice in your head that, and sometimes just kind of let them tell you. And sometimes if you try that, you never know where your piece might go, whether it's a play or a short story or what it is. It can go in a totally different direction that can be really interesting. So again, just in the interest of time here, any questions that anybody has about anything we've talked about, any other playwriting questions or just writing questions in general I can answer for anybody? Yes, Jennifer, please.
We're both unmuting her at the same time. There she is.
Okay, I think I'm good.
You're good.
So I have a more general question
Great.
that is less about the actual playwriting aspect.
Great.
A couple of the pieces I'm looking to create are based off of real people, where either they've published some kind of memoir, or there's been something written. I apologize, I can't hear in my ear right now. So whether it's they've written a book or something's been written about them, so it's a real person.
Sure.
What are the ramifications as far as writing something off of a real person, whether they're still alive or not? What kind of permissions, if any, need to be done? Do you need to say, like, this is a dramatized version of, if it's not 100%? Do you kind of get where I'm going?
Yeah, I do. That's a very good question. It's a bit of a complex question, but I'll try to give you as simple as an answer as I can in the interest of time. Okay. If it is a famous person, pretty much they are, if it's someone who would be considered in the public domain as a celebrity of whatever kind, you're off the hook as long as you don't say anything deflammatory about them, inflammatory about them. So, you know, you can write about Marilyn Monroe as long as you don't say Marilyn Monroe was a big slut. Because then her estate would come after you and that sort of thing. So, you know, you do have to be careful. There's a wonderful piece called Buyer and Seller that's been done a lot on there about this guy who worked as a personal assistant. And he was on, it's written by the wonderful writer Jonathan Tolins, and he goes on and on and on at the beginning of this about, this is a work of fiction. I don't know Barbra Streisand personally. This is something, you know, so please, if you're Barbra Streisand's attorneys, do not come after me, et cetera, et cetera. But there's a way to do it without having to be that involved about it. But, you know, sometimes you can get away with something as simple as based on a true story. Or something like that. But, you know, I write a lot of revisionist history myself. My piece about the Titanic has certain elements of revisionist history. I have a new piece about Marilyn Monroe, which I've been talking to Benjamin a lot about, called Marilyn, Mom and Me, which is a new play that's actually going to be done as a live stream in mid-May. And if you go to lukeyankee.com or to my YouTube channel, the Luke Yankee channel, you can find information about it there if you're interested. But a long-winded way of saying, you have to be careful, but again, you can take certain liberties. I hope that answered your question.
I think so.
Well, you know, thank you, Jennifer. And I'm sorry. I mean, this time flew by so fast.
Yeah.
This has just been amazing. Show of hands, how maybe we can convince Mr. Yankee to come back and do another one of these.
Well, this was a great pleasure. And if you have other specific questions, you know, my website is lukeyankee.com. There's a link to my email there. You can email me there. You can find out about my other plays, you know, the Marilyn Monroe project, other things that are coming up. And this has been absolutely delightful. And thank you all for your sharing. Thank you for your wonderful writing. And I encourage you to keep going.
Oh, thank you, Luke. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today.
Yes.